Just don't pay attention.
Good.
Okay, it's going to be yes. I'm alive. So sorry. Okay. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay. Okay. Just a minute. Okay. Okay. I'm busy. Okay, thank you. Все, okay. Okay, хорошо. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, cool. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Sorry. Okay, good evening, everybody. Salam. Welcome to Baku Power Day Excel and Innovative Educators Club Group's second session in 2022. Nice to see you with the beautiful view of my lovely city, Baku. And let's go on with our agenda. So actually, I have already greeted you. So the first part of our session is greeting, and then I will go with giving information about my sponsor, and I will also define the winners for among the participants who participated in our previous session. Actually, our sponsor Enterprise DNA gives 3 full licenses to people who participate in our sessions. And then, of course, I will give a little bit information about current speaker and also upcoming event speakers. And also, we'll have Q&A session at the end. So, as you may see on our screen, Baku Power BI and Excel and Innovative Educators Meetup Group has its sponsor. It's Enterprise DNA. This is the great platform with great content of Power BI. And this is a place where people gather to share and to learn their knowledge and experiences. And it's the cover of their site. Actually, you may check, and I hope you will find it very useful. And of course, we'll define our winners in next minute. As for today's speaker, we have speaker originally from Portugal, but who is living in lovely Canada, and Celia Alves, who will be talking about parameters and custom functions in Power Query in Excel. I hope Celia will give the necessary information about herself. And as for our next speaker, we have Shemaz Silva, who is from Azerbaijan and who will be talking about HR data analytics. So this is the page. Actually, I will share this presentation on my Meetup group if you want to contact with me. So just it's enough to click on control button and hover over your mouse, and you just clicking on one of these icons will take you to the necessary site. So, and also I kindly ask you to support me just being subscribing to my YouTube channel, and also to have an opportunity just to watch the replay videos on my YouTube channel. So thank you for joining, and I hope you will enjoy the session, and I still believe that I will see you on February 3rd, 2022. But if you don't mind, I would like to take your 2 minutes just to define our winners. So I have, let me share on the screen. As this is the report page of Zoom. In last session, if you pay attention, roughly 353 persons just try to connect. Okay, I got their list, right? And here we may find the list of participants. Just let's go to the end, and here we see that roughly 402 rows. But what I would like to do is just to give you a little bit of information. Yana was our speaker, and she was only for 100 minutes. So it means that she talked about topics Power BI and also Power Automate. So for Power BI, she spent 60 minutes. But taking it into consideration, I added the people who were at least 60 minutes in our previous meetup. So the number of those people is 67. And here we can find just unique list of, say, participants. And I have to select 3 people. I'm just going to use index and rand between function. So here, with the help of VLOOKUP function, we can get the selected person's email address, but actually not everyone has his or her email address. Anyway, I will put their winners named on the platform. And if they turn me back, then and provide me with their email address, I will direct to enterprise name. So here, if I say click on F9, so it automatically selects the necessary people. It's very possible that one person's name will be appeared 2 times. If this kind of this case is occurs, I will do it once again. So I will count back beginning from 3, and I will release my fingers, right? So 3, 2, 1. So these people are our, say, winners. So Tunel Kojayeva, all 3 people are from Azerbaijan. So of course I will send to these people email, and I don't know, but if I find her on my meetup, so I will also direct her email address to enterprise name. That's from my side. So congratulations. So I would like to be stage is yours, Celia. So I'm just going to stop sharing. So please go on.
Thank you. Thank you, Ilgar, for your invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes.
It's recording now. Thank you for the invitation, I was saying, and thank you to everyone who is here today. I prepared a session about parameters in Power Query, and so we will start, and I will explain what I'm going to talk about. So I should share. Where is it? Okay, here at the bottom. I'm more used to Teams, so I kind of get lost here sometimes. Let's share screen 2. And I should share my, okay, maybe let me take this out of here. Okay. So thank you so much again for joining us today, and for joining the Baku Power BI, Excel, and Innovative Educators Meetup Group. I love this name. And my presentation today will be about parameters and custom functions in Power Query in Excel. So I use Power Query in Excel. I haven't had the opportunity to use it much in Power BI yet. Can I move this thing out of here? Is it? Oh yeah, it can be moved out. Not sure if it can be minimized. Okay.
Yes.
So some of you already know me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Celia Alves. I work as an Excel consultant on my own consulting business. It's Solvent Excel Consulting. I develop solutions for companies based in Excel, Power BI, VBA, Power Pivot. So combining all those things together, depending on what the scenario is, to help companies save time and money by automating tasks. And I also created recently the Excel Snap Reports program, where I teach all these things that I've been learning over the years to my students, to help them also become better at Excel and knowing how to automate tasks and have those results for them as well. And clicking in the wrong slide. Okay. I also have, so in terms of my background, I studied mathematics and education back in Portugal, from where I came originally. And I was working as an high school mathematics teacher for about 20 years there. Then I moved to Canada in 2013. And a few years later, I started a career as an Excel consultant. And I also have my YouTube channel, Celia Alves Solve Excel. If you want to find me there, I'm constantly publishing tutorials, mostly related to Excel and Power Query. Power Query in Excel, sometimes VBA. So my focus and my main interest is always about how can we make things, how can we save time in Excel? How can we automate tasks? And my channel is mostly focused on that type of tutorials. I also founded the MS Excel Toronto Meetup group. Similarly to the Baku group, we also have regular sessions, currently once a month. Feel free to check the Meetup group and to join us if you'd like. We had our session yesterday. The next session will be in February 16th about web scraping with Power Query. And we will have David Monroy from Microsoft, from the Excel team, presenting about that topic. And I also became an MVP 2 years ago. So some of this work is also related to that award. I'm proud to be part of that community. It's amazing to have the opportunity to contact directly to the team that develops Excel. So for our session today, I'm going to talk about why may we need to use parameters and custom functions in Power Query. And we'll show some examples of how to create custom functions without coding. So there's different ways of creating a custom function. Some involve manipulating the M code, so the language behind the queries that we create in Power Query, that is automatically, each query automatically gets written behind the scenes using the M language. And if we know how to deal with that language, we can manipulate that or even create a function from scratch. My intent today is to help people understanding the concept of parameter and custom function, and how they can only by using the user interface create parameters, create a custom function, and use that function. So I will only focus on that technique. I'm not going to focus on, okay, we could also write the code and do something different like that. So that's my purpose today. And a disclaimer here, I am not an expert. I learn as I have the opportunity to deal with different cases, and that's what I share both in my YouTube channel and in here. I'm constantly learning. So if you look for other presentations about parameters and custom functions, I'm sure you will find different approaches. In fact, at the end, I will leave you some resources for some of those sessions where you can complement what we will talk here today with other methods and other topics. Okay, so what is a function? Mathematically speaking, a function takes one or more variables and returns a result depending on the value of those variables, okay? So for example, going back to school, if we have this function represented by fx equal to x, meaning 2 times x, depending on the value that we give to the variable, we get a different result. So if x is 1, 2 times 1, 2. If x is 5, 2 times 5 is 10. So just as a reminder of what we've learned before. A parameter is a little bit different than a variable. Although sometimes when we create a custom function in Power Query, we end up mixing the two. So what is the parameter may also be the variable. What I mean by that is that if I add a parameter a here and say that the function depends on x, but there's that a parameter there, then the result will be something that we cannot determine until we determine until we choose a value for a. So if we choose value 5, then the result here would be 2 times 5, 10, and here 10 times 5, 50. So this is just an exercise that I had to do myself to make myself to understand the different components. You don't need to really worry about this, but maybe this, by listening to this seed will stay with you, and depending on your background and interest, you may find yourself trying to understand each one of the pieces that compose each query and custom function later, or each parameter and custom function. So in Power Query, the function will be a query that applies a number of transformation steps to a certain element. That element, that object, could be a table, or could be a string, a piece of text, something like that, a list. And the X variable is what is fed into the source step of that transformation. And the A, which is the parameter, is one element that can vary in each transformation. But okay, but I'm not going to, this is just for those of you who might find interesting to think about this. It's not, like I said, important to worry about this. And sometimes the parameter and the variable end up being the same. So what I wanted to tell you also is that if you use Power Query, you already created parameters and custom functions. If you already created a connection to a folder with files, then you already created parameters and custom functions, because all that happens behind the scenes when we do a connection like that. So let's see what I mean by that. Let's see that example. I'm going to stop share and we'll share a different screen. Excuse me. So let me share my screen here in the front, in front of me. Share again, and this would be screen 1. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Explorer? Okay. So let me show you a folder here. So we have this folder. No, in fact, I'm not in the correct. Let me bring my notes here up. Sorry for that. So this example. Okay, it's that one will be for the next step. First, we'll start with an example here. So I was saying, when we create a connection to a folder, Power Query creates parameters and custom functions for us automatically. In this case, I have this folder, monthly reports with a number of CSV files. And I have this Excel file that already contains, let me see if I can remove this out of here. Mute people? Okay, good. So this file here already contains a query that connects to that folder. So if you come to data, queries and connections, and I don't know why, but this always opens like that, very narrow in the new version. Okay, this is the query that we create. We go data, get data from file, from folder. Then we point to the folder that I showed you. And after we make a few transformations, we get this. So if you notice, we have this folder here that says transform file from monthly reports, which is the name of the main query, monthly reports. And inside this folder, we get a number of different things. One says it's a sample file. The other says it's a parameter. And the parameter, when we create a parameter, it needs to have a value as reference. That's called the current value. So the current value for that parameter is being that sample file. And then we have the transform file function and the transform sample file query. The way this goes, let me double click here and open Power Query. So this is the main query, monthly reports. Maybe let me put this bigger. Ilgar, every time the screen gets too small, let me know, because sometimes I forget to zoom in. So
Okay.
let me know. Okay, so this is the main query. I went to the source and I chose the folder, and then these steps here are created automatically by Power Query, including this step here that says invoke custom function. And the custom function is this one. But we never have to touch this custom function. In fact, all we have to care about is the transform sample file. The transform sample file is one query that we can work with it as a regular query. We have the steps here. We can do the transformations we want. So for example, in this case, the transformation is, okay, start with one of those CSV files. And then there's stuff that we don't need here at the top. So we remove those top rows. And then we promote this first row as headers. Okay. And then what Power Query does is it creates this function that is linked to this query. And anything we do here to this transform sample file query, it will be automatically updated in the code of this function. If we click in the function and we take a peek at the code, we see that it seems that only has one step. But in fact, all the steps are in here. We can see source, remove top rows, and promote headers. Exactly the same steps that we have here. And then in the main query, that function is invoked, is called here. So in this step, what happens is we have a column with different files. Each cell contains a file. One of these files was chosen to be the sample file. So if we go here to sample file, the first file 2021-01 CSV, it is the first file in here. You can see here is the one that is Power Query is using as a sample, and we use that file as a starting point to work the transformations we need to be made to all the files. Okay, and then so going back here to the main query, after this step we have removed other columns. So here we had 2 columns. Then in here we kept only the transform file. Oh, okay. And before that, here the transform file is a column that is created by calling in the function. So this table here is the result of transforming this file. So in this case, this function, what it does is it takes a file, which happens to be a CSV file, and then does those 3 steps, applies those 3 steps to that file and generates a result, which is in this table. Then the second file, exactly the same steps, generates a second table. And then what we want when we connect to a folder to consolidate those files is to append all these tables. So the next step after this is, well, we don't need the column content, so we only keep these tables that resulted from the function. And then we expand the content and we get all the results here from the different files. And then we keep on and we may do other transformations. For example, in my case, I was extracting a text before the limiter. I was doing some transformations here for that particular scenario where I was combining these files. Okay. What is interesting about all this is the link between these two things, the transform sample file query and the function. And this is what what allows us to do this magic to create this magic in Power Query. Because, for example, now I could say, oh, you know what, from all these, let's say these are orders of certain products or products, and we have the quantity and the price. Let's say that I am only interested in analyzing orders above 400. So what we can do is we can come to the transform sample file and add that step. Or in this case, we could also add that at the end. So depending on the scenario, sometimes we can add the transformations we need when we already have everything combined. Other times we need to do that in the transform sample file. So, for example, the first step, the second step that says remove top rows, it needs to be done to each one of the files individually, and then not when we already have them all piled up, right? So, for example, here, if I say, oh, you know, I just want to get, so after the last step, let's say here I only need quantities above 400. Well, first, I will not get number filters because the data type is not appropriate. So I need to change these to a whole number. And now that I have this column with data type whole number, now I can have number filters here, and I can say greater than or equal to, and add a value, 400 in this case, and apply. Okay. And the beautiful thing here is that now that I've done that to my transform sample file, the function automatically was updated to include that step here. We have here quantity greater than 400. And so in the main query, when we are invoking the function here, sometimes we may need to do a refresh preview or exactly a refresh preview to enforce the change. But what happens is that when we expand here, for sure, we will only have values above 400. So because the function was applied, including that step. And so what we have here, all these different pieces. If you think about it, we could say, oh, okay, so why can't I create custom functions automatically like these ones were created? And we kind of do. We need to do some of the steps, but we can use this same technology when we need to create a function, a custom function, and have that function created for us, and a way to update that function easily. Okay, let me check my notes here to see if I don't forget anything. Yeah, another thing that we can do that could be interesting is in here in view and query dependencies. It's interesting to try to understand how these things are linked together. So the monthly report, which is the main query, ends up, in fact, only depending on the sample file and then the transform file function. These other elements, the parameter and the transform sample file, end up being only helper elements that are created to make the function the function work. In fact, if you go to a new workbook and you come and copy this query by doing this, I'm going to discard, I don't need those changes, I'm going to close the file. If you come here, copy, and then paste in a new workbook, you will see that only the function and the initial sample file are carried out to that new workbook. It does not copy the transform sample file query, meaning that in that new workbook, you have to use the function as is. You cannot make changes to it the way you would do with the transform sample file, or you can go and work with the M code and make transformations, make changes to the function directly in the M code. Okay, so this is the technique that we are going to use today is, okay, how can I tell Power Query, hey, here's a sample. It could be, in this case, the sample was a CSV file, but in other situations, it may be just a piece of text. We will see different scenarios. Here's a sample, and here's the transformations that I will do. I will show you the transformations that I need based on a parameter created based on that sample. So I explained to you, Power Query, these steps only once, and I need you to understand what I want and then apply the same logic to a list of other elements similar to the first one. And we can do that. We can do that, have the parameter created for us and have the function created for us and have the sample query on the side, the transform sample file on the side for us to use. So let's see an example. Don't close. So here we have just a summary of what I was saying. Transform sample file so this is what we were looking at. So it goes sample file, then the sample file or a sample is utilized by the parameter as a current value. And then we have the transform sample file that uses the parameter. And then we create, or Power Query creates for us the function. Okay. And then we use the function in our main query. So let's do the first example, consolidating sheets from workbook. And I'm going to copy this path here to show you the first example. In this case, we have one file with multiple sheets. That all look the same. They have the same structure. Everything is on the same place all the time. And we have different expenses here. And we want to combine all these expenses into just one table. In fact, this type of files should not even exist, right? With these things separate by sheets, but sometimes they do. And at some point, we may need to consolidate all the information from all those sheets, and Power Query is the tool to go. Okay, so I'm going to close the file, and I'm going to create a new Excel file here. And let's call it just demo. And in this file, I'm going to create a query that connects to that Excel file. So now we are not connecting to a folder, we are connecting to a file. So data, get data from file, from workbook. Good thing that I put my phone in silent mode, I thought. But it's ringing here. Okay, I thought, but I didn't do it. So I'm sorry for that. Okay, so in here, let's bring that folder. And that's the file, exactly, expense sheets. So we connect to the file. The first challenge here is, how do I select all the sheets? Because if we start selecting, it only lets us select one. And if we notice here and do select multiple items and we start to do this, it will not serve our purpose, because this will create multiple queries, one separate query for each one of the sheets. So what we need to do is to click this icon here and then transform data. Oh, let me uncheck that maybe. Okay, and then transform data. And so we have this list with all the elements in the Excel file. It happens that we only have sheets. We do not have extra tables, or we do not have named ranges that could also be caught by this step. And in each one of these cells, if we click here, we can see a preview of each one of those sheets. So we see that we are not ready to come here and click the button to combine all the sheets, all the tables that we have here, because we need to do some cleanup first here. There's a lot going on there that we don't need. We need to clean that first. So, okay, so what are we going to do? Like I mentioned before, to create a function, we need to work with a sample. So let's select one of the table. It can be the first one. And when we click on the word table, it will drill down. So it will create these steps here. Or maybe it's too small. Let me put this bigger. And maybe we can close this for now. So it created these steps. We don't need a change type step for now. Let's remove that. So we have the navigation step. And in this step, if you notice, we have this string here, which is the sheet name. So when I was here and I click this table, it refers to the sheet name 2021-01_Sophie. Okay. So we have this sheet name here hard-coded, and this is our sample. In fact, I'm going to take the opportunity to do Control-C because we will need that in a bit. And what we need to do to create a parameter and to create a function is first prepare on the side a sample, a transform sample query. In this case is not transform sample file. It could be transform sample sheet. So what we are going to do, I'm going to duplicate this query here, and I'm going to rename them and do a few things. So the first one, I'm going to call it all sheets data. Let me come here. This first one, I'll call it all sheets data. It is the query that will consolidate all the sheets. Okay, so we don't need this navigation step there. I'm going to remove it. And this other one will be my sample or my transformation query. I will call it one sheet data. So this is where I will explain to Power Query what I want it to do with enter. It's not working. Why? One sheet data, enter. Okay, now it worked. This is where I will explain to Power Query what I want it to do with just one of the sheets. And then we can apply that same logic to all the sheets. So now on this query, all sheets data, we can, not all sheets data, on the query one sheet data, let's do the transformations we need. So it could go in different ways. And of course, these steps will depend on your scenario. It will never be exactly the same as I have here. So for example, I'm not interested in column 5. I can remove column 5. I'm going to select the first columns, 4 columns, and do remove other columns. Okay. In this column, oh, sorry, let me back here. In this column 3 here, the description shows null all the time, but in real life, this description can contain information about each one of the expenses, some notes, and we may want to keep that column. Okay. We do not need the top rows, 5 rows. There's information here that we could possibly need. So for example, there's the employee name, there's the manager name. I could go and explain how to extract those values with M code and how to, or even with conditional columns, and then how to enter those here. but that's not the purpose today. So let's just keep it simple. Also, the employee name is available in the sheet name in this case, so we could use it from there if we needed to. So let's imagine we do not need employee name, we do not need any of this stuff that we have here at the top. And I'm going to remove rows, remove top rows, and I'm going to remove 5 rows because then my headers are in row number 6 here. So remove top rows 5, okay? And now I can promote, use first row as headers. And I see that I have an empty row here that I don't need. I will uncheck the null, and later we will see that in other scenarios this will not be enough, but for now that's probably what we would do, right? Okay, I don't need the null entry, I'm going to filter that out. Okay, so now this is looking good, it's clean. And the only thing missing to do is to change data types or to confirm. In fact, the change data types already occurred here. We could move that step down. And let's see what happened here. Date, text, amount. Maybe the amount we should choose currency instead of whole number, just in case, because most likely we will have cents to consider. Replace current step. And we are good in this query. Now we have the one sheet data query has all the steps that we need. Okay, so now it's time to create our parameter. We need to create that manually using one of the functions, one of the functionalities we have available here. So while when we are connecting to a folder, Power Query guesses that we need that parameter and creates that for us, here we need to take action on that. So coming to Home, Manage Parameters, and here either Manage Parameters or New Parameter. That's what we want to do now. Okay, we give a name to our parameter, and we can call it sheet name, because what will vary from sheet to sheet will be the sheet name. So Power Query needs to find each one of the sheets separately, and then every time it finds one sheet, we'll apply those transformations we just programmed. Okay, so the parameter name will be sheet name. The type will be text, that the name of a sheet is a text string. And the value, the current value, I'm going to do Control V, and I'm putting here that sheet name that we used as a sample. Okay, so now we have our parameter created. Just click OK, and there we go. We have the parameter created, and we could replace this parameter value by any other name, any other sheet name in that file. That will allow us to, that would allow us, for example, to verify for a certain sheet what will happen when we apply the steps to that sheet. But this parameter and the transform query, the sample, this query that we are using as a sample are not connected yet. So now we need to go back to this query, the query one sheet data, and go through these steps and find where that sheet name is hard-coded. And we see here that the sheet name is hard-coded in here. So we need to remove this and say sheet name. Put here whatever the name of the parameter is that you created. So we created the parameter sheet name, okay? And press enter. Nothing will happen, because sheet name, when Power Query sees this, it says, oh, sheet name is a parameter. Okay, what's the current value in that parameter? The current value in that parameter is the sheet name that we had before. So it's doing exactly the same thing. It's just taking that one extra step of finding the current value for the parameter. Okay, so now, since we have a query that contains at least one parameter, we are ready to, we can transform this parameter into a function. And that's exactly what we will do here. And to do that is very easy. Just right click on the query, and there's a option here that says create function. Okay, and now we need to give a name to this function. I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to use the same name as for the other query, but with fn for function before. So function one sheet data. Okay, and look what happens. Just like that, Power Query created, organized all these elements for us. It said, okay, this is your main query. And these things here, they all belong to the same process. And the process is the one that creates the function. So it created this function for us, which similarly to what I've showed you before when we're connecting to a folder, it has the exact same steps, except that it has this little thing here at the top, which is just the name of the parameter, saying that the parameter is text and then equal, greater than, and start with the let, which we have here. So if we go to, not here, here, in our transform sample file, equivalent to the transform sample file query, in this case, we call it, we named it one sheet data. All the steps that we saw in that function, in that code, are these steps here. Okay. So that's it. So now we have our function ready here. And similarly to what happens when we are creating working with a connection to a folder, and sometimes we need to go back to the transform sample file and do adjustments to it, like we did for when we said, oh, I only want quantities greater than 400. The same thing happens here. When I need to make changes to these steps because I change my mind or I want something else, another detail added to my process, I can come to this query, and whatever I do here will be added to the function. And then when the function is used in our main query, which we will do in a minute, everything will update accordingly. Okay, so now we go to our main query, all sheets data. We only have the source step at the moment. And we want to apply our function. The function, if you remember, needs a sheet name, and the sheet names are in this column name. So what I can do is discard everything else. I don't need the other things. So remove other columns and keep just this column with the sheet names. Okay. And now I'm going to say, okay, Power Query, remember those steps I taught you just now for this first sheet? Now take those instructions and apply the same thing to each one of those things, each one of these sheets, and then pile the results on top of each other. Okay, so that's what we are going to do. We come to add column, and then in here, invoke custom function. So we are adding a custom column, and the operation we are doing in that custom column to create the column is to invoke the function. And in here, we say, let's see, did I put column name sheet data? Okay, so for this column, we will get a new column in our query there, and I'm going to call that column sheet data. And we get to pick the function we want to apply. Since we only have this one function that we just created, that's the only option available. And then we get to pick which of these columns contains the values that will replace the current value in the parameter for each one of the runs of that function. We only have one column in this case also, so I only have the name column available here. That's the name of the column that contains the values for the parameter, okay? And do okay, and that's it. So now we get this column, which is similar to that one we had when we connected to the folder that contained that says invoked. It also, the step was also invoked custom function. Exactly, invoked custom function. So if we take a peek, not click inside on top of the word, but if you click here inside the cell on the side, we will see the different a preview of the different tables that are coming from each one of the sheets. And you may have already noticed the problem that I was mentioning before, is that some of these sheets are coming with null and null rows here, null dates, and we don't want that. So let's see here. This is look, right? Look's sheet. So we can come here, copy this name. Okay. Let's come here to the parameter. Let's replace the current value with looks sheet. And now let's come to the one sheet data query. And now we get to see the same steps, but this time applied to this sheet for look, not for the sheet that we initially used as a sample. And we can see that the filtered rows here didn't work well, because in this case, not only I have that null entry that we filtered out from the other sheet, but the other sheet had dates up to here. But in this case, we also have blank cells. So instead of this filtered rows step, what we need to do here is probably select the column and do here in home, remove rows, remove, how did I do that? Remove empty, it's not there. Let's see, right click. Where is the remove empty? Cannot see it. Or maybe in filter. Let me see if it is in here. Remove empty. Yeah, so the option is in here, in the filter button, remove empty, and insert. So it's doing more than we were doing here. Here we were removing just rows with the null value. Now we don't need this step. Let me remove that step. And in here, we are removing rows that either contain null or an empty string, okay? So now it's working well. You see how we came back to our transform sample file kind of query, right? Our transform sample query. And we made the adjustments that we needed here so that now it works well with all our sheets. So now just go back to the old data, all sheets data query, and you can see here, now we don't have that problem of those rows that we don't need coming up. Okay, so now that we have everything, the function was applied to each one of these sheets, we can press this button and expand the content of each one of those tables. We can select all the columns. We don't need to use original column name as prefix. Click OK. And there we go. So now we have all the information we needed. And let me close maybe here. We have all the information we needed. Now we can Control A to select all the columns. In this case, this column is coming empty just because the data is not available, but in some situations it could come with text there. So let's leave it there. And let's come to transform and the text data type here. And now let's see, text, date, text, text, and the amount again as whole number. Let's put it as currency, replace current, and that's it. So now home, close and load to. And now we created, if you remember, I have not loaded anything into Excel since I started working with Power Query. And because we created multiple queries, whatever I choose here will be applied to all the queries. So if I choose to load as a table, it will load both the main table with all the data, with all the sheets data, but will also load the transform sample file. I don't want that. So I'm going to choose only create connection. Okay, just to load all the queries. And now for this one, which is the one I want to have in my spreadsheet, I'm going to change the loading destination, right click, load to, And now I change this to a table. It can be in existing worksheet, okay. And that's it. So here we have our data all combined. Now we could test this. Let's save. Let's go back to our folder. And in here, in our expense sheets file, let's open the file. And let's just create one extra file here at the end. Okay, so I'm going to just right click, move or copy, and move to the end, create a copy. And I'm going to say this is, let's say, January, and Celia. And let's remove all these expenses here. Let's put just 100. And as you can see, this does not have a formula here, so I need to update my total. So $100 for Celia. Oh, the employee here would be Celia, but of course this is not being caused by the query, the content of this cell. Only the content of this little range here will be included in our final data. So we need to have an education expense for Celia, $100. Click save, close, and now let's cross our fingers. Right click, refresh, or just here, data, refresh all. And let's check. Did it load? I didn't pay attention to the number of rows, but there we go. The file, the entry is in here, right? So we got our data there. So this was the first example, and I'm not sure how we, zooming too much. I'm not sure how we are on terms of time. Maybe we are done with the time, Ilgar. Let me know. And
no, it's actually we have time. Sorry.
How much time left do we have?
So 20 minutes.
20 more minutes?
20.
Yeah. 20 more minutes. Okay, so in that case, I can do another example. Let me know if there are any questions so far. I'm not looking at the chat.
Okay, I'm having a look, but unfortunately there is no question for now. Everything is, everybody understands everything.
Good. I hope it is interesting enough. I'm not sure how pros people are, for those who are attending here today. Some of them I know they are pros at Power Query, so maybe this is too introductory level for them. So we hope that the recording will help someone. So now the next example, top 3 orders. And now I'll go a little bit faster because I already explained all the mechanics. So let's see. Oh, let me grab the folder path from here. And let's find this folder. So in here I have this sheet, this Excel sheet, and it contains a table with orders, different dates, client ID and names, and it's in fact similar to the previous example that we saw when we were connecting to the folder. It's the same type of data. And imagine that I want to get all the top 3 orders for each one of the customers. So I have a lot of customers here, a number of them, considerable number of them. And for each one of them, I would have to do something like, okay, let's see this person here, this client has all these orders throughout different months. So this is data for 1 year. And let's say for some reason I was interested in sort smaller to largest, or maybe I could just use the filter numbers too. I could choose top 10 here instead of sorting. But in Power Query, we will go sort descending, and then I will keep the first 3. Oh, it's not good. It's sort largest to smallest. And then we will want to extract these three values at the top. Okay, that's what I want for some reason. It doesn't matter the reason now. It's just as an example. So let's go back to our table and let's create a function for this. So similarly to what we did before, first thing data, and in this case we are connecting to a table. So from table/range, and while it loads, I'm bringing up my notes here. And I have this query created. Maybe let me zoom out, or not zoom out, zoom in a little bit. Okay, if it's not enough, let me know. The change type step, I don't need it at this point. Let's remove it. So I have one query here, query orders. And similarly to what we've done before, I'm going to duplicate this query so that I can create a sample using this query. Okay. Okay. What I want to do with this is to work with one client only. So I'm going to just filter one of the client IDs. It could be the names, but of course, client ID is more recommendable than the client name, because there could be two different client names for two different people with same client name. So let's choose the client ID. I'm going to just use this one, the first one. It doesn't matter. So we pick one, and I'm going to copy that value there and copy. Control, select and copy. We may need it later. So we filtered for that one client. We are only interested in, and we can rename this query. How did I rename this? On query, filter one client, remove client sample. I think I named it. So let's rename this client sample, or sample client. It doesn't, sample client. Okay, so this is a query that now is working with one client only. And of all the information I have available here, in this case, I'm only interested in the quantity column. So I can remove all the other columns, right click, remove other columns. And then this quantity column, I want it to be sorted in descending order. I'm going to say these are whole numbers. And I could also, I'm not sure if there is top here. No, there's no top 10 or something like we have in Excel here. So we can just use that trick, sort descending. And then we can say, come home and remove, keep rows, keep only the top rows, the 3 top rows. So here, 3 top rows. Okay, so I explained Power Query what to do with just one client. Okay. So now we are ready to create our parameter. Now that we explained all the steps we need for one client, this will be our transform sample client query, and we need a parameter. Okay. The parameter will be, we need to create the parameter first. We come to home, manage parameters, and new parameter. What will vary from situation to situation will be the client ID number. So client ID. Okay. The client ID can be a decimal number. If I put a text here, text string, we need to make it the same data type we are using in the query, right? So you can test that then on your end. Current value is that value that I copied, and click OK. So there we go. We have our parameter here. The name of the parameter is client ID. So I can go to my sample client query, and when I filtered for that one specific client, I replace that value with my parameter, and the parameter is called client ID. Okay, it shows up there with the IntelliSense. Enter. Nothing will happen because again, the current value of the parameter is exactly the same client ID that we had there before. Okay, so now we can transform, now that our query contains a parameter, we can transform this query or create one function out of this query. So right click and create function. Let's give a name for this function. We can put it FN just to, the way you name it, it doesn't matter. You can choose your own naming rules. FN because it's a function, and I'm going to call this query the top 3. FN top 3 orders, top 3 orders. Okay, click OK here. There we go. We get everything nicely organized for us. And now we have our function available. So coming to our main query, we need to now think, okay, what do I need? I need a list of all the clients, and then I need to have only the top 3 orders for each one of the clients. So I don't need any of these columns. I don't need the date. I don't need, maybe I can leave the client name if I want to, just for extra information to make it easier to identify the client. If I am interested in knowing which kind of product generated that those top orders, we could do that. I'm not going to do that because that will add extra steps to our query here. So in this case, if the request was just the client ID by client, the top 3 orders, okay, I'm going to remove other columns. Remove other columns. I don't need any of the other columns. Then I have duplicates here, right? Because these were referring to different orders. So select 2 columns and remove rows, remove duplicates here. Okay, now I have a unique list of client ID numbers and client names. Maybe it's a good idea to change data types here because the parameter data type should be aligned. So let's do transform. Oh, I could do it manually. I don't need to do detect data types because it's only 2 columns. So this one will be, well, I think I chose decimal in the parameter because we did not have whole number there. Let's choose whole number here, and it should work. If not, we need to change it to decimal. And the second column is text. Okay, so we are now ready to go and apply, to invoke, to call our function. So add column, invoke custom function, and the new function can be top 3 orders. This will give us a little table with those top 3 quantities ordered by each one of the clients. The function is this one, is the only one we have in this file, and the client ID. The client ID is, it's not a particular number. It's each one of the numbers that we have in column name. No, in column name, no, in one of the columns. So I will choose column name, and here I need to choose to indicate the column name that contains the client ID numbers. So client ID is the column, client ID is the column that contains the values that I want to use as parameter values each time the function runs. So the function is going to run 1 time per row, and okay. So there we go. So now we have the little tables here containing the different numbers with orders, the top 3 quantity, the 3 greater quantities ordered by each one of the clients. And then now we could expand if you want to. And we can, and then we have this as whole number. And there we go. And now we can load this if we want to. Again, close and load to. If I choose a table, it will load all the queries, or not all the two queries, the main query and the transform sample file query as tables. So I'm going to choose only create connection. In fact, that is already my default on my machine, to load always as a connection only. And then I change the loading destination only for this query here. And I'll say, give me in a table, new worksheet maybe this time, and okay. And we will get a list of all the each client appears. Let me zoom in. Each client appears 3 times with the corresponding name and ID, and the 3 quantities that were the greatest quantities for each one of them. So that's it. The idea here, now you can use this technique the way you want. Always the same thing. You need to think of how to come up with a sample of what you need to do, and then use that, create one query just for that sample, create a parameter where the current value of that sample is the value that you used in your particular example, and then replace the value that was hard-coded in your transform sample query with the name of the new parameter that you created, and then go to the main query and call your function. First transform your sample query as a function, create a function out of it, and then use that function in your main query. So that's it. The second example, I have another one. Let me close this file, but maybe, I don't know, Ilgar, how is the time now? Maybe
10 minutes left.
10 minutes left. So let me try do the other one, or you want people to ask questions instead? I'm not sure if there are any questions.
People just very thankful to you for a wonderful session.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. Okay, so let's see. I have another one here, which is consolidating sheets from multiple Google Sheets files. So this is a different one. Let me grab this information here. And the same technique always. So like I said, I'm not going to explore all the other techniques, M code, nothing. It's just because if people understand how this works, and it takes some time. For me, it took me some time, and it still does. Sometimes I still go back to remember, okay, so what were those steps? Oh, okay, this the parameter and that and that and that. So it takes time, and it takes practice with different scenarios to consolidate, there's the word, to consolidate our knowledge and our understanding of what we are using, the steps we are using. So like, okay, let's try this one very quickly. Let's see. In this file, no, that didn't work. That's not the correct slide. No, yeah, that's not the one. Just a second, because I copied the wrong path to my presentation there. So let me correct that. This thing here, it's not correct. Okay. This is the one we want. Okay. So I have this file here where I have links to 3 different Google Sheets. 2 of them are already in this table. The third one we will use to test at the end. So imagine these are 3 different stores, and each one of the stores has one Google Sheets workbook with the exact same structure, but of course different values. If we click on this value, on this link here, we get to see one of those sheets. it is with view only, so I am not the owner of these sheets. These sheets were created by one of my students, and she allowed me to use these. In fact, I have a live session recorded a while ago where we will go a little bit further than what I am demonstrating today. Today I'm going to demonstrate how to just import one of the sheets, and in that session I go and we explain how to import the 3 sheets from the 3 stores. So that takes a little bit more time. That's not what we are going to do today, but if you want, you can find, I forgot to put that in my, okay, if I remember, I'll give the link later if someone is interested. So I want to import the sheet, the table, this sales table from each one of the, not table, sheet here, but this in fact will be recognized as a table. We will see that in a minute, from each one of the 3 stores, and then I want to combine the 3 sales tables together. Okay. What we need to do when we want to connect to Google Sheets is to first, they need to be set up as anyone with a link can access. Not publish on the web, because if you publish on the web, they will become public. That you don't want that. You just want to share the link with certain people. And then this portion here of the link will have to be replaced so that this can be imported as an Excel workbook. I'm going to close, and this is the replacement we need to do. In fact, it was not that thing that I was showing you. The link here, the original link, contains this edit. I'm going to put bigger. Contains this piece here. This piece here needs to be replaced with this other one here. Export question mark, blah, 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 format equal to XLSX. Okay, so I created a query already. If we come to data, queries and connections, that loads this table with the store names to Power Query. So if we edit this query, we see that Control-Shift+ to zoom in here. So it has a couple of steps. Source is picking up the table. And then in this step here, I'm doing that replacement that I explained. So on the original link where we had this, we now want to have this, okay? Because this will be what will work for Power Query to be able to import as an Excel file, okay? And in here, I just change type. I'm going to click here in one of the cells, store A, and I'm going to select and copy because we will need this to access that file. Okay, so now the steps are the same as before. We create a new query, let's see, copy first link, data, get data. Oh yeah, instead of, okay, it can be from here. Let's see, new query from other sources from the web. And the link is the one that I just copied, right? So I'm going to do Control-V, that one that has that little thing changed at the end, and click OK. And now it comes up with the information about that sheet. I want table 1. That's what I want. So I'm going to select that and click OK. And the only thing now for this example today, let's imagine I want all the data exactly as is. For example, this one, we can see that we have dashes here. We don't want to split anything, just imagine everything is as we need. Just check change type, date, text, whole number, price, has a decimal. It could be currency as well, and the total the same. Let's leave it like that. And close and load as a connection only. So home, close and load to, and we don't need to load that individual table, so only create connection, okay. And it's there. I was waiting, but it's there already. So, okay, so now we can create our parameter. Okay. Our parameter is what needs to be different from each time we apply the function, we apply that query. And what will be different is the file, the link, the URL to the file is what will be different from time to time. So we can launch Power Query, for example, by editing this one here. And in Power Query Editor, zoom in here, we come and do home and manage parameters, new parameter. And this new parameter, I'm going to name it store link or store URL, it could be. And it's going to be a piece of text. And I'm going to paste that same URL that I just copied a while ago and click OK. So we have our parameter here, store link. Okay. Now, let's go back to this parameter here. It was named table1. We can rename it, give it, let's say, store sales. Store sales table, something like that, that is meaningful to you. And what we need to do is to find where we need to replace our parameter. And the parameter where is hard-coded, the value is hard-coded in step source. So in here, we need to take that out, delete that, and choose store link. Store link is the name of the parameter that we created, and apply that. Nothing happens because the store link current value is exactly the same that we had before, hard-coded in the query. Okay, so now that we have our store link, the parameter here, we can create a function out of this query, the store sales query, that will serve as a transform sample file, a transform sample query. And right click and create function. So always the same thing. Let's give a name to this function. It can be fn and then store sales. So get the store sales from each one of the URLs. And okay. And there we go, same thing, always very organized. We just need to come back to our main query. And now I have a list of URLs here too. And I want to apply the same transformation to both of them. So I can do add column, invoke custom function. And this function will create a new column for me because it's add column. So I will call it store sales, something like that. Let's say store sales, that's the name of the new column. And the function we are going to use is the fn store sales function. The parameter, we only have one. And we need to say where are the parameter values. It's not in column store. If you remember, our parameter is a URL, and the URL is in column shared link. So we need to switch this to shared link, and okay. And now we have this error here because we are accessing one source based on a parameter, and sometimes we get this error here. So in this case, you need to consider whether or not it's okay for you to change the data privacy settings. In this case, I'm not sending anything important. I'm just sending a URL link to that other source. So, and I would be the owner. I'm not, in fact, in this case, but I would be the owner, or I would have access to those Google Sheet files anyways. So I can come here to solve this firewall error. It's we go and come to home, no, not home, file, and options and settings, query options. And we need to come here to current workbook. So do not do this globally, just for this particular workbook. Privacy, change this to ignore the privacy levels and potentially improve performance, and click OK. There might be other ways of dealing with this. Let's do refresh. And now we have access to those tables. In the end, I do not need the shared link column, so I can delete that. And now I could expand all the data I need from that table, either all the columns or just select the columns I need and click OK. And now I have the name, so the name of the store, and then I have for each store all the rows with data. Let me, and then here under transform, detect data types and see if everything is okay. It was not very successful here. It had data types there. Okay, so text, this one needs to be a date. This one needs to be text. This one needs to be a whole number. And this one needs to be a decimal number or a currency, maybe better. It takes less memory if it is currency, because only works with 4 decimal places. Same thing here, total currency. Okay, home, close and load 2. Only create connection for now. And now let's change the loading destination for this one to a table in, oops, too much. Say in here, and okay. And like that, we have 1,000 rows with data from all the stores. If we go here, we see we have store A and store B. And now if I add this third store to my table, now we should have store C appearing in our final data. So refresh all. Now we have 1,501 rows loaded, and now we have data from store C here as well. So this is it. Different examples of how you can always use the same technique. Sometimes the difficult part is to decide and to define, okay, what will be my sample? What will it be my sample? What will it be my parameter? And then the technique is always the same. Okay, so let me, I'm going to, let me see if I'm just checking if I have anything else here. No, just the last few slides. I'm going to stop share and share again from another monitor, if that's okay with you. Where do I stop sharing? In fact, never mind. I'll just change my monitor here, primary. Okay, so let's continue the presentation, just the last few slides. And resources to learn. I mentioned at the beginning that there were other sessions where other speakers talked about, there are many sessions with different people talking about parameters and custom functions. These are 2 of them. This last one is mine. For those of you who want to know how to create a dynamic path to a folder, it's a question that is asked a lot. Also uses a parameter, but it's reading from a cell in Excel. It's a different thing. Excuse me. And then these other 2 sessions, Dick Moffat and Tanya Kuhn also presented about parameters and custom functions. So I can provide this file later to the meetup group if you want, Ilgar, and then people can check those sessions. And in here, if you are interested in my program about Excel automation, for Excel reports automation, there's 2 links here that you can use. This first one allows you to enroll as free student in the students platform and access the free modules. So some of the content is made available for free. You can check that if you'd like. I'm not taking students at the moment. I'm just taking care of the first group of students, the first class, and in a few weeks I may be opening a new group of students. If you are interested in getting into the waiting list so that you are alerted when a new group of students, a new class opens, then at that time you can decide whether or not to join. You can enroll in this link here. My YouTube channel, there's one playlist there with live classes that are longer videos, but they are more detailed. One of those lessons is in fact about that problem I told you with Google Sheets, and it's more complete than the process we did today. So if you want, you can check that. And this is my contact information. I will leave it on for a little bit in case you want to check the way you can find me on different platforms. There's the newsletter as well. If you're interested in what's going on in Excel, what's coming up new, I publish that about once a month, even sometimes not even that. So it's not coming all the time. Feel free to connect, ask any questions, let me know if I can help you in any way. And that's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Celia. I appreciate your effort. I appreciate your contribution on behalf of community. Really, you did a great job. I'm very happy that we have one question. So let me ask this question, and then
it was so clear.
Yeah, taking it also an opportunity, I kindly ask people to turn on their cameras. So Mehanuddin Rupum is asking, looking forward to. No. He was asking that I saw you manually set data type. Can't we auto detect if we extract data with Google Sheet? It was his question.
Yeah, because at that time we are in Power Query. We are in Power Query, and we can always use the detect data type inside Power Query. It doesn't matter what's the source. So we can always use that functionality. In that case, I just did manually because it was just 2 columns. So I just went and chose that. They indicated the data type manually, but we could do that with detect data types automatically. And but when you use detect data types, please always take the time to review what Power Query decided for you in terms of data types and make any adjustments, because sometimes it does not do the right choices.
Okay, thank you. Taking it an opportunity, I would like to thank Sakif Sayini, Imran Haq, Shafak Eyderli, Ishak for their kind words. At the end of this session, I kindly ask people to turn on their cameras to take a picture. If they don't mind, taking it also an opportunity, I would like to end streaming, right? Okay. That's it. So good.